Welcome to the Femsplainers. I'm Danielle Crittenden.
And I'm Christina Hoff-Summers.
And we're joined, as always, in the studio by Ella Ryder.
Hello.
Ella's going to have some important millennial news this week for us, but we'll get to that. And
generational updates.
Generational updates to keep us young and informed. Although I just learned, I don't know if you know this, Christina, but the Nationals won the World Series.
I know, and the fact that you didn't watch the games, you showed no
interest. I didn't watch the games.
I'm questioning your patriotism.
I had to look the next day to see if they won or not. Well, I was following. You got to give me, I followed it sort of.
It was a beautiful game, and it was historic because both teams lost whenever they played in their hometown. They lost every game in their hometown. But fortunately, the last game, Houston, we won.
Well, unfortunately, they weren't playing here because it was raining. But speaking of being plugged in, I did not know about the song Baby Shark. And now I really regret knowing about it. I don't want to be this plugged in because once you hear it, it never gets out of your head.
This whole shark thing is unfortunate.
Is it okay to gender the shark, like to say mommy shark? And daddy shark has the big arm movement, and mommy shark has the little arm movement. And I think that's kind of, stereotypical.
I had a terrible moral conflict watching the game because I was texting back and forth with my granddaughter Eliza, who lives in Houston, who's an Astros fan. But most of all, had they won, she would get the day off from school. So she was deeply invested. But I'm a Red Sox fan. You can only really have one team. It's the Red Sox. But I wanted the Nats. They hadn't won for years and years when they were the Senators.
Like from the 1920s.
Yeah.
Well, I feel for Eliza. One year, our kids, like when you're promised no school, that's a big deal in kid world. And one year, I was during the election of George W., the presidential election year, George W., and our kids were still very small. And they were running across past the television that was on with George W. giving a speech. And he said, no school across America. And then he paused and went on to say, will, be blah, blah, blah. And all the kids heard was, no school across America. And for the rest of the campaign, we couldn't get it out of our kids' heads that they were immediate, Bush fans. And they said, we have to elect this man because he has promised
no school
across America. Anyway, we just got back from Nashville.
Music City.
Okay, well, I want to talk about Politicon. And that was it's not our first live panel, but in such a venue with strangers. We've done panels here at the American Enterprise.
We were together,
Institute.
Co-splainers.
Yeah.
And we had a wonderful guest. Joel Stein was there.
Author of, let's plug his book, In Defense of Elites. And he also authored Man-Made, in which a dad learns to be a man for his son. First of all, his books, In Defense of Elites sounds like it's some very wonky, it is so screamingly funny that I thought I was causing turbulence on the plane laughing.
But he makes serious points, and he's looking for that reasonable center where people can speak civilly across the political divide, and he sympathizes with both sides. He went to a town with the greatest number of Trump supporters. Miami.
Texas.
Yeah, and then he describes these dinner parties in his neighborhood in Hollywood.
Yeah, the Hollywood Hills.
With the Hollywood elites and their politics, members of the resistance. And he tries to, explain each side to the other. And he was great.
He was great.
And fun.
And what was impressive about that crowd at Politicon was we could see the audience, which of course listeners could not. And when we asked, how many Trump supporters are there? How many,
And there were Bernie
Democrats
bros that came up to greet us.
Well, right. It was half and half. They were sitting. We walk through those stands. They have these funny things where you can buy political knickknacks. And they had full Trump suits, top and bottom pattern with Trump's face next to anti-Trump booths, and everybody was getting along. I don't think I've seen people of both sides in such proximity where there no gunfights erupted, no screaming matches of any kind.
No, it's unique as an event because it brings people from different sides together. And one of the most successful panels was your husband, David Frum, with Ann Coulter.
That was a phenomenal discussion, and not just because he's my husband.
No.
You would think, okay, it's going to be another one of these political theater where, Ann Coulter is going to do the sort of Trump talking points, and David's going to be his, intellectual never-Trumper. And instead, it became a discussion like the future of the soul of the Republican,
movement, right.
The conservative movement. And talking about issues as immigration and things. It's actually on YouTube. I don't want to plug anything else but us, of course, but I would go look that up if you want to see an example. But that afterwards we did the meet and greet. This was very funny. They took us to what it looked like one of those pens that they have at,
like at a
national,
rodeo.
National Agricultural. And we were in a pen, those little steel pen.
And they let people in through the gate one at a time to come and.
I was terrified. No one would show up.
She was afraid no one would show up.
I was like a party.
We had at one point more people online than James Carville.
Yeah, we consistently had more people than James Carville, but then we don't look like snakeheads.
Don't say that. He's cute.
I don't know about cute, but okay. But anyway, to be fair, a lot of them, 99% were there to meet Professor Summers. I'm such a fan. And we had, this was very funny. I just ended up becoming like your concierge, holding your bag and things. But there'd be a guy with a MAGA hat and a gun T-shirt, and he'd come up and say, Professor Summers, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. And he would go, and then these tattooed 22-year-olds walked up, and they were all wearing their Bernie shirts.
Yes.
It was a wonderfully diverse group. It was hilarious.
Here's the thing. That Trump guy and those Bernie bros, they disagree on almost everything, except they are committed to free speech, and they don't like where on these sort of social and cultural issues where people have become censorious and, or this rigid orthodoxy. And so they appreciate the femsplainers, and they became my fans because of, I guess, the factual feminism.
And there are a lot of Gamergate.
There was a Gamergate element. It came up. And
girl Gamergaters.
The girl Gamergaters were the best, and they were always denied. Whenever people tell this story, it's like men against women. 20% of the hardcore Gamergaters were these really cool
specified
girls.
People who play video games that got caught up. But we talked about it.
We talked about it.
But you then... Oh, the one thing I asked the Bernie bros, I've always wanted to ask this of a young Bernie supporter. I said, how can you support Bernie? He's so old. He's such an old, cranky man.
Yeah.
And they said, he's not cranky. I'm like, okay. He said, he's angry. And we're angry. Well, can't you find a younger, angrier person to support? I can't get Larry David out of my head.
Yeah, but Larry David is something lovable about him. I find Bernie.
He reminds you of your husband's relatives.
Maybe my husband.
Well, you abandoned me. I got roped in to do a second panel all by myself without you.
I worried about you. It was too early in the morning. It was like at
11.
Oh, my God.
No, it was noon. It was noon. No. It was noon Nashville time, which meant 1 our time.
Early in the morning.
And it was called The Future is Female and the Future is Now.
Oh, wow.
Wow. And I was on a panel with Jill Wine-Banks, who's a very formidable attorney. She was with us through the Watergate prosecution. She is like a big ERA supporter. So she was kind of very old school 1970s feminism. We had Lauren Chen, who has to come on this show.
Lauren Chen.
YouTube millennial star.
I love her. I've been on her podcast. We should go on her podcast and have her on
Lauren,
ours.
are you listening? Lauren, are you listening? But anyway, she was lovely.
She's smart. She's lovely. And she is one of these young people who, for whatever reason, at a very early age, was just able to be sensible and reasonable and find her way through this, morass of
Yeah, she was like talking about her fiance, and she looked a little nervous up on the stage. She looked, because she was with the other feminists whom I had not heard of until, I had, but I hadn't put the name with the person together. Lauren Duca.
I wanted to meet her. She's blocked me on Twitter. She's a ferocious feminist, but she was attacked so viciously by BuzzFeed,
right,
that I sympathized with her.
Well, because what? Just remind me. Right,
she taught a class at NYU
where she took yoga breaks or something.
Yeah, and it was ridiculous that they invited her to teach a course for I think it was the graduate program, in journalism. But for whatever reason, she was invited and didn't have the preparation, but she did her best. And this BuzzFeed was so personal and so unfair to her, even though you could be critical of her. But I think it was based on jealousy and resentment because she has a huge social media following.
Right. And she's just written this book about revolution and...
Yeah, she's very carried away with the wokeism. But she's lively. She's...
Right. It was actually a lively panel.
Yeah.
And the Jill Wine-Banks talked about, it sounded, it was sort of, she was a lovely, impressive person. She was bringing up talking points that we were debating in the 90s, which is,
I think maybe the 70s.
The wage
maybe
gap.
These were talking points from...
Well, you know what? You realize the talking points simply don't change.
And no matter how much progress we make, the statistics don't change. The injustices... It's as if nothing has happened.
Well, she was like, okay, the wage gap until, equal numbers of women in corporations, equal female politicians, blah, blah, blah. Lauren Duca was like, revolution! It's like, gender is all a construct. And, we've had that discussion. And then the phrase kept coming up, we won't have equality until, and we don't have enough quality until. And you start to think, what? My question was, well, what is enough? When are we going to say meet success, right?
Yeah, someone said a very good thing about college attendance, because there was a time there were more men, and she said, well, when is it going to be fair for women?
Right.
Will it be fair when it's 50%?
Right.
Because now it's approaching 60%. Will it be fair when it's 70%? Maybe it'll be fair when there are no men at all.
Well, that was the thing. Like, I don't think we even know. You get up on those panels, and Lauren Duca has this idea that, we're not going to be equal till men and women are completely indistinguishable. Jill Wine-Banks has an idea that until there's, this sort of numerical parity in every possible statistic, we won't be equal.
Even if women don't want that?
Even if women don't want that. And then actually Lauren and I, this is where I bonded with her, we both talked about, I feel we're going to be equal when we all feel that we have the same right to pursue happiness, whatever that happiness is. And if women are not going to, follow in the path of men, what are those problems? The economic uncertainty that is facing us all, and especially not elite women. And we talk about this ad nauseum, men and women. And then I said, and men, that I think I really threw a stink bomb. It was all very civil. But I talked about, can we just talk about the problems of men? And I quoted Meghan Markle, who our woke duchess,
yes,
who said, in terms of gender equality, I think that conversation can't happen without men being a part of it. And then, why are we having these conversations independent of men and also independently of what is happening to men? And that when you look at women versus men, the future is the female, and the future is now, because men, as again we've discussed so often, are having a really hard time. They're not attending college in the same numbers. Their suicide rates are like
the opioid crisis,
4 times as likely as us,
proportionally impacting men.
Their life expectancy is shorter. And then this is the big...
And if they speak up for themselves, they're told to check their privilege and sit down. And, we'll have a panel. The future is female. No men would ever be invited to that panel. Yet imagine men. The future is male.
The future is white. That would be scary. But yeah, and the one of the big scary facts about this is that men in the 25 to 54 age range workforce has declined dramatically since 1965, which means 10 to 15% of men in prime years are doing nothing.
Right.
And this can be
they don't even
opioids.
Yeah.
They can be in prison. They can be having mental disease. But they're actually a large segment of the male population is just doing nothing.
Yeah, and
that's
the economist
terrifying.
Larry Summers predicts that if nothing changes, this is going to grow. This cohort is going to grow, and it's a threat to the future of our economy. This is our workforce in prime working years, and to say nothing about the psychological toll it exacts on these men and on their mothers and their sisters and their girlfriends and friends. This is a social and economic crisis. And they acknowledge it in other countries. They're looking for ways to help men. But here, we just say, it's toxic masculinity. If you want to help men, just get them to be like women. Well, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen.
Well, it might help with their life expectancy. but no, here's a killer. Young American men will live less long than Chinese men. And you think how much Chinese men smoke. Like, they're all fierce smokers. Like,
I think that might be Chinese men in the U.S.
I don't think so.
Really?
No. I think I didn't pull it to talk about today, but just overall, the American life expectancy, this just came out, is going, like, we're 20th now in world countries.
Well, that's partly the opioid crisis and the suicides.
Right. And men's magazines are closing.
Well, that's also...
That was an article we came across.
Not only are they, if they're not closing, then they're being taken over by either feminists or activists who view masculinity as toxic and will not give men reasonable advice, will not take their problems seriously.
Well, they stopped being that whole era. I think, where was our article on the death of the men's magazines? I think it was in the City Journal.
Oh, that was so good.
Yeah, and it's talking about that whole era of sort of starting with like Playboy and then going to Esquire, GQ, and Maxim, and now these are all rolling back. They tried to make Esquire woke under a new editor, and I believe did they put a transgender man on the cover?
Playboy had a trans.
Maybe that was it. Right. Right.
It's the centerfold.
It's the centerfold. And no, actually, a lot of our femsplaining guests we've had on are like columnists for Playboy, because that's where they can have
it was the one
non-woke feminist views. Like Bridget Fedesi, who's great. We loved having her on.
Well, you know what? It's good for our podcast because we take the needs of men seriously. And I think, like Joe Rogan and, Adam Carolla, there are a lot of people that's where the guys are going.
Right, that's true. And it may be just
it may be just magazines.
The death of the magazine anyway.
But they have hurried along the death of these magazines. I mean, they just, it's absurd what's happened to GQ, Esquire, Playboy. They've become Jezebel.
I always used to love reading Esquire magazine in the 80s, I guess. They had the columnist Bob Greene, and I liked reading. It was a world of sort of cigars and men traveling and tweedy jackets.
Good writing.
And very, very good writing. But, I think a lot of that, women's magazines persist because we love these big, thick magazines with all compiled of fashion, fashion
page
and
after
articles
page.
of beauty, and which online is still, there are a lot of sources for it, but there's something about nice having a big, fat, glossy thing to look.
Although I don't buy them anymore. Do you still buy them?
I never bought it. I
used to always buy. I always wanted to read every issue of Vogue and Allure, and now I don't know, for some reason I go online.
Yeah. We go to Net-a-Porter, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm going the day after Thanksgiving. So we did last year. My daughters and I just sat and we did online shopping.
I don't think we talked enough about the city of Nashville, where Politicon took place.
Yes, I was going to reveal something, because this is the first podcast, and we'll get to this, where it is the end of Sober October for Danielle.
She didn't drink in Nashville.
I didn't drink in Nashville. I had a sip of David's bourbon. That was it.
That was a test to see if you liked it.
Still,
Did you like it?
Yes, it was delicious. Oh. But we took Joel Stein out for dinner, and I was like, I was totally boring, right? I was sort of tired from the day.
She wouldn't go out.
I was with David. To be fair, I was
block
with David.
away from 3 or 4 of the most thrilling streets in the country, where they have live music in every
and line dancing.
And dancing in the streets. People are going by, pedaling these
in those portable bars,
moving bars,
right,
where you pedal, and then there's a bartender, and you can have your sangria or whatever they drink, your mint juleps.
Well, apparently it's the bridesmaid capital of. And we saw that. We saw huge, like hollowed out fire trucks of women, like. Bridal parties.
I mean, it is a good place to have your bachelorette party.
But you went on. I was with David. David is he's not a guy you want to go to country music venues, but he certainly would not line.
Music. There are like thousands of songwriters and musicians, aspiring to be successful. So the quality is incomparable. So it's just beautiful, original live music everywhere.
But you took Joel's side. So David and I went back to the hotel, and you went out with Joel Stein.
Yeah.
And you went bar hopping with Joel Stein. And I think
he had to get up at 5.
I said, we're going back to the hotel. And Christina said, I think I'll just wander over to, 2nd Avenue and have a look. And Joel said, I'm going to go with her. But you didn't get him to line dance. See, you needed me. I would have got him to line dance, I think.
Well, I will never forget once in Cancun, we were in a little town with your children.
My husband will be listening to this, so be careful.
David, just
skip forward.
And we were fine. You were not, but there was a lot of live music and discos, and then there was a bar with reggae music, and I love reggae. Suddenly, it was a scene like when you transformed and you were different, and your children, you left us all. And went in and started to dance. And then little B was like sick.
Well, there was an area for her to stand just outside the door safely while her mommy danced.
Actually, I got her in the bar.
We're such good influences. Yeah, fun. Auntie
she sat
Christina
there and was doing her
homework, probably. Well, okay, but the new elephant in our room. Okay, so Sober October is finished. And one of our listeners sent us, one of our British listeners sent us an article from the Daily Mash, which is UK's answer to The Onion, called it's about Sober October smugness. And I'll just read an excerpt from the article. It said, "A woman who cut a tiny amount of alcohol out of her life has discovered that being a self-righteous goody-goody is a much better buzz. During Sober October, Francesca Johnson has replaced her usual 3 or 4 glasses of wine a month with the pleasurable effects of lecturing other people about their drinking."
Oh, God.
I quote, "I particularly enjoy telling people they should be able to enjoy themselves without alcohol, then watching their faces as they worry about having a drink problem and realize that I'm better than them." Now, I haven't lectured you this week, right?
You know what?
I have not.
You are a cool... sober person, and I don't know many like that, because
I was trying to be, although I failed at line dancing.
I don't really. I am always a little worried about teetotalers, unless I find out they're former alcoholics.
Yeah.
Then all is forgiven. I understand, but if they just never drink, why?
You know what? Former alcoholics tend to be much more fun.
Yeah.
Than people who are just, sorry to any teetotalers out there, but There is a
And like
kind
it's
of,
like former
like
smokers.
people who don't
Those
dance
are my
or something.
people.
Yeah.
They've never smoked, like why?
Well,
I mean, it's just a good
kind
idea.
of with
Not now. I don't
the
mean
never
that now.
smokers.
I don't mean that now, but
But I've never objected to smoking in other people. I just don't like it myself. It's not my vice. But the husband in this mythical article suggested that he needed a bender November. I guess that is a natural follower to Sober October. But I am drinking my LaCroix today, even though Sober October is done, because without becoming smug, I just want to say I have lost weight. You feel so much
radiant.
better. I feel so much better that I'm going to see if I can keep this up to Thanksgiving.
But here's my
And then go on a November
one
bender.
problem, and it was said well by Napoleon Bonaparte. He said about wine and alcohol that in victory you deserve it, in defeat you need it. Right? So when I'm in a great mood and I'm celebrating,
Right.
I want to drink.
Right.
When nothing is working and I'm down, I have to have.
But it's the problem is like I love One Drink Danielle. One Drink Danielle is so much fun, but you don't want to get to 3 Drink Danielle. That becomes problematic.
That becomes you go to sleep.
Hey, do you notice I've been staying up late? I've been sending you messages at like 11 p.m.
I know.
I've been texting. I feel like I still have time to catch up on things at 11 p.m., but I haven't fallen asleep. But I just want to mention at this point in the program, we are not having a guest today. So we've hooked them. Do you think they'll stay?
Yeah. There's no guest. It's just us.
Us. Because we have so much to catch up on.
We have so much to catch up. We haven't even talked about the blind audition study.
Yes, I think you mentioned it last week, but again, we just had no time to go into it. So, no, I mean, last week was Nashville. The week before, when we had Elizabeth Drew, we got a little bit of stuff, but we also have a ton of really fun and interesting listener reactions. So we just thought we'd
And a lot of
roll
things
with
that are
this.
stressing me out and driving me to drink, like what they've done to the play, the musical My Fair Lady. We'll get to that.
Okay, let's take a quick pause. This episode, we have 2 sponsors. So let's take a quick pause there for our first sponsor, and then we'll come back and talk about your blind audition and My Fair Lady question mark.
And Baby, It's Cold Outside. It's that season again where everybody's attacking the song. And John Legend has his own new version.
All right, we'll come back.
Okay,
we'll come
okay.
back.
Well, Danielle, I am a stickler about dental hygiene. I mean,
Except for Izzy.
yeah.
Izzy, your dog has the worst breath.
I'm working on it. But I have not yet solved that problem with my dog. But for myself, I always floss, and I'm always looking for better toothbrushes. And I've tried every conceivable thing, with water picks and things like that. This product is fantastic because what makes a better toothbrush, it's not industrial power, different modes. If you ask a dentist, they'll tell you it's not about the brush, it's how you use it. And that's why Quip was created. It's called Quip. It's created by dentists, and its design is focused on what really matters. And basically it's developing good habits.
Well, Quip's sensitive vibrations, which is maybe what you really like about it, Christina, with a built-in timer, guide gentle brushing for the dentist recommended 2 minutes with 30-second pulses, ensuring an even clean. I actually love that factor of the toothbrush, that it times you so you can actually just space out while brushing your teeth and know that you've done a good job. Quip will also automatically deliver brush heads to you every 3 months. And its sleek, intuitive design, as you point out, is just so simple to use. And it comes with a travel cap that doubles as a mirror mount. Yeah. So you can make sure you're getting in between your teeth.
But do floss as well. I have a whole speech about that when we'll get to it at some point.
Yeah, we'll wait till we have a floss sponsor.
So it starts at just $25. You will get your first refill free at getquip.com/femsplain.
That's amazing because I know that other toothbrushes of this kind with these features can cost you over $100. But Quip starts at just $25. It's a simple way to support our show and start brushing better. But you have to go to getquip, QUIP.com/femsplain to get your first brush refill free. Can you get one for Izzy?
You think? I try to brush her teeth, and she just won't let me.
Yeah. Okay, Christina, so remind me of your, it's not blonde ambition, it's blind audition story. So just
I've
give
talked
us a
about this
summary
before,
and then-
so I'll just be very quick. People used to ask me when I would question things like the wage gap and just a lot of shoddy analysis and explanations of the gap. They would say, "Well, isn't there any research that you respect that shows that the injustices women face?" And I would often cite the blind audition study. It was carried out by Harvard and Princeton economists, these two brilliant women, and they discovered, so they claimed, that before that there was a time where orchestras were very undemocratic, and which is word of mouth, and there were no women. And orchestras, in an effort to become more democratic and fair, they implemented this blind audition where you would try out behind a screen where you couldn't be seen. And this was not, they didn't do this to be fair to women in particular. They just thought it would be fair to everyone. So people's favorite student didn't necessarily get selected. You would just hear the violin player, the oboe player behind a screen you wouldn't know. And in this study, they published it in 2000, they tried to see if there was this connection because the number of women in orchestras did begin to increase after they introduced these screens. So the question is, did the screens explain the great numbers of women?
This is probably like one of the best blind studies literally study you can do. Yeah.
And you can read hundreds of news stories. There have been thousands of articles about how what they did was they claimed, yes, that it did increase the number of women, and they credited the screens. They were a little cagey about how they worded it, but you would come away from the article thinking that by usually male judges not being able to see women, they were forced to be fair. Mm-hmm. And when they were forced to be fair and women had a chance, their numbers soared. That's the message people took away. That's what Malcolm Gladwell, he kind of popularized this study in Blink and so forth. Anyway, last summer, some data scientists just went back and looked at the study and found out that it showed no such thing. In fact, the raw data showed that the curtains, the screens, actually helped men. The two scholars, the two economists, admit that, but they said, well, they had a reason why that doesn't count, and then they did various calculations and ran the numbers, and then they found these tiny, sort of faint effects of the screen. However, none of them were strong enough to support any clear conclusions, and they came up with a lot of contradictory findings. At certain stages of the audition, the screens sort of helped women or seemed to help women. At other stages, they helped men. These are the kinds of findings you dread as a researcher because they invested all this time and came out.
I don't know how you would tell, though, a screen helped a man or a woman.
Well, you just look at the numbers of, in their case, you looked how many women were hired in the.
And did it and they looked at the female numbers or no?
They were not able to show that.
Oh, okay.
They were not able to show that. And anyway, anybody that's interested, I had a piece in the Wall Street Journal where I explained not only I gave my version, but a lot of it was based on the work that was done by this data scientist at Columbia University, Andrew Gelman, and this a Danish statistician, and a philosopher who'd already, I was sort of summarizing what they found, but taking the message to people, stop quoting this study. It is the most cited study in these equity seminars in businesses. People just love to tell the blind audition study. And a lot of people very invested in proving bias. They love this study because it sort of proves they think that men can't be fair. Women, if they see us, they're going to, we get a lower grade.
I would wonder if, you were a really, really attractive female musician, whether that could work in your favor, but I guess we're not allowed to.
Well, actually, they did based on that study, the blind audition study, the original one in 2000, there was a study in Australia just about a year and a half ago, inspired by that study, where they decided to do blind recruitment for positions in, higher echelons of the Australian in the government, and it turned out it hurt women. If people could see resumes and they saw it was a woman, they saw it was a man, they practiced a mild form of affirmative action. When they eliminated, when you had no idea who it was, more men got hired. Uh-huh. It was the exact opposite of what they expected. And this was directly inspired by this not phony, I don't want to say that, but this misleading, misunderstood blind audition study. And there was this woman, Iris Bonet, who's the dean of faculty at the Harvard Kennedy School. And she has a book on gender equity. She opens it by telling about this wonderful study. And
well, once it's hit Malcolm Gladwell's books, it's now being taught in every,
it's taught everywhere.
Taught
and
everywhere,
everyone
everywhere.
believes it. So in my Factual Feminist, I tried to set the record straight that this study showed no such thing. Yeah. Stop. And in the Wall Street Journal, it was just a longer version. And I've had a very good reaction. I mean, I don't know, lots of views and so forth, and no one's come forward to defend it. Because what happens, initially people, because I saw this happen as I was writing the piece, I would show it to economist friends or statisticians, and they would say, wait a minute, this was published in a leading journal. These are Harvard economists. And they would look at the paper, and they would look, and they go, oh, my God.
Oh, never mind.
Right.
Never
so
mind.
if you believe in that study, just look at it.
Well, didn't you get some praise on Twitter or something from one of your heroes? You did get.
Oh, no. Well, I was a little worried because there's someone I follow on Twitter whom I like a lot, a science writer, Jesse Signal. Yeah. And he does a good job evaluating research for its cogency and rigor and so forth. And I was a little afraid, if I had made any mistake, he would find it. Yeah. It's like Eliza Doolittle at the ball with dancing with Sultan Kaparthe, and is she really a lady? And then he determines
she's Hungarian,
not only Hungarian but of royal blood. She is a princess.
So
her English is too good, he said.
You passed it. You are a Hungarian royalty.
I am Hungarian royalty, and he wrote and he said something very true, which is hard to explain to people, but the fact that this study fell, that this study has not held up, is just devastating for social science because it was the jewel in the crown. Yeah. And many, many studies are now, as you know, there's this replication crisis. This study's weaknesses aren't just it can't be replicated. There was no there. There were no findings. The findings were just conjured by
just
journalists.
A gap exploder. You just bring your gap gun to these issues of gaps, and you kind of.
I want to be open-minded, and I don't we all have confirmation bias, and I tried my best to be fair, and I don't take the authors themselves are not guilty of being dishonest. They were just unclear, and they did something you shouldn't do, which is they stated throughout the paper the limitations, and they had a lot of problems. But in the concluding paragraph, they had some carefully worded sentences that made it very easy for journalists just to say, "Oh my God!"
And that's always what we go to.
Screens increased
the
by
last
50%.
The last paragraphs. Well,
didn't.
You brought up My Fair Lady. And there's a new version on Broadway.
It's been there for a while, and it's coming to Washington. And
You tried to get me to do it, and I was, of course, game until you told me what they did in this new version. And actually, there was a review of it by the famous critic Rex Reed in the Observer. It's not I don't know which Observer this Observer is. It's not the New York Observer. It's not the British Observer. It's just called the Observer, but it was by Rex Reed. And he wrote that, as widely acknowledged in news stories and even reviews, the writer of this or director has said that the Me Too movement was in part what led him to rewrite and reshape the ending.
not just the ending.
And it says, no spoilers, please, but after nearly 3 hours of joy, Reed writes, you will no longer go away happy. For the first time in my life, I left My Fair Lady sad as a pallbearer. I don't wish to relay the false impression that I have anything against the Me Too movement in general, but I firmly disapprove of changing the end of an established American musical classic for that or any other political movement or for any reason at all.
Well, this director, Bartlett Sher, for whatever reason, got it into his mind that this was really a musical about girl power and how Eliza's empowered. And when she sings Just You White, Henry Higgins, which is
Just You White.
Henry Higgins, Just You White, you'll be sorry, but your tears will be too light. When she sings, she's really angry. She's furious. And Henry Higgins is made to seem just evil. And it makes no sense because...
Well, it's the happy ending, right?
It's like, not just the happy ending, but...
He molds her, and
but
then
they mold each other.
Okay.
They fall in love. She changes him. He met his match in her. And it's a wonderful love story. I mean, it's a fairy tale. And it's just a beautiful musical. And they've disfigured it.
So in the end, I think we can spoiler alert a bit.
Of course we can. In the end,
everybody knows
she leaves. She leaves him.
But to find herself, her real self,
her dreams, and he can just be, by himself. Now, to be fair, George Bernard Shaw in the original Pygmalion, they don't in the end end up together because Shaw did not like happy endings. But and when they staged it in Britain, they changed the ending and made it happy against his will.
And then it just stayed happy.
And it just stayed happy. The audience demanded it, as they should. So we don't.
I thought you were going to tell me that the song "Why Can't a Woman Be More Like a Man," which is one of the funniest.
Which is funny.
Songs. I thought it was now like "Why Can't a Man Be More Like a Woman," which is really the anthem of our times.
Right. Why can't a woman be more like a man? Women are irrational. That's all there is to that. Their heads are full of cotton, hay, and rags. They're nothing but irritating, agitating, aggravating hags.
Well, you got to admit it's kind of surprising. This, I mean, the woman leaving the man for her sense of identity and empowerment. I mean, that's been in
not even
the movies. Freddie. Not even. Well, Freddie was it? Oh, Freddie.
Marry Freddie.
What
an infantile idea.
No. I mean, I'm glad she didn't marry Freddie because that was a bad idea. But she has, that idea that only will you discover yourself and realize yourself separately from a relationship and independent of a man has been a theme of our times for a few decades at this point, right? And in a way you could look at, I mean, Henry Higgins was a domineering bachelor. And in fact, I find myself using the Henry Higgins analogy a lot these days because so many men are stained bachelors. And we've talked about this into their late 30s and 40s, and then they become very rigid. And that's
women too. They're bachelorettes and bachelors everywhere, and marriage rates are all-time low. So,
but we have our own vices when we stay single. But yeah, no, I never found, like, I actually found from a purely romantic viewpoint that Eliza marries Henry Higgins. I was a little disappointed by that too because he did seem like a big pain in the ass. The idea that she'd marry Freddie or go off on her own was also...
She could handle him. She was as strong as he was and as willful and opinionated and scrappy. They belong together. I will not have it. And I will not have... I love this musical. And
That's why I'm not going to see it
I'm not
in D.C.
I'm not going to go see it.
Oh,
It's
I thought
best-
you were. Anyway, despite my
Maybe I
protests.
will.
Okay, so I don't know how this leads us into, but let's just say it does. Let's segue into the John Legend redo of Baby It's Cold Outside, that date rape creepy song classic that they rewrote last year, I thought. I thought they'd solved this last year, but now John Legend has come in. He's rewritten it, and this is going to kick off our, the holiday season.
I mean, it's just last year, I thought, some radio stations were going to stop playing it. They declared it a rape anthem. And for those who don't know,
Kind of more
that's
like a roofie anthem, I think, but yeah.
It's not. It's not. The whole thing about the drink is that it's got alcohol in it. That it was, but
It was originally written, the songwriter wrote it for so he and his wife could sing at parties, right?
And it says that, I think it was last year, they said there were some fact checkers at Snopes who concluded that it legitimized sexual entrapment. And as I said, some radio stations in Madison.
They stopped playing, but then they played it again because there was
because there was an uproar. But it's from, I think, 1944, this duet. And there's a seemingly reluctant female who says, I can't stay, and an importunate suitor who tells her, it's too cold outside. It's not about rape or entrapment or abuse. It's about mutual affection and attraction. And the two characters are toying with each other and flirting and having fun.
So you say, but Ella, what do you think? We've got Ella, the Ella, the Gen Zer, but you speak for both generations. We appreciate. What do you find it rapey?
No.
Okay.
Well, I think younger people, especially younger women, are always told, watch your drink when you go to a bar, never let a guy buy you a
Which
drink.
is more true today, and that's genuine. Like, that never happened except among serial killers when I was a young woman.
Yeah, and so I think there was something I remember reading that was saying, like, there was the actual statistics on how many people are roofied, and it's very low. But there's this idea.
It's an urban legend, and
I don't think it's an urban legend. Like, I think because all manners of drugs of that kind are more available now than they were. They were limited to serial killers when we were younger. I've heard it from my own daughters that this is not something. It's happened to my elder daughter, and not just like the roofie drug that knocks you out, but sometimes just chemicals that sort of make you extra drunk too quickly. I mean, am I right, Ella? That it is
I know
a
people
real thing.
who it's happened to.
But yeah, it may not be as massive as made out to.
But I think so. I think when you first hear the song, and that's what you're taught to look for every time you go out to get a drink, which is a lot in college. I think it does initially sound like, wait, is she asking if there's something weird in her drink? But when you know the history of the song and you really listen to all of the words, I think it's clear. I always heard that it was a way for her to politely accept his offer, but do it in a way that she had,
saved face.
Saved face. And she was worried about what her friends would think. And so she has to overcome the disapproval of,
her mother and
so forth.
Right.
So you could also read it as I did, is a song about liberation and
or what about permission seeking? I mean, the man is in some ways doing what we want men to do, is just keep asking in different ways. Can I do this? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this?
But there's a line in the new Legend song that says, "It's
what
your
does he
body
say?
and your choice."
Where does that come in? Can we tell from?
What will my friends think? I think they'll rejoice if I have. Oh God, I don't know the tune anymore. If I have one more drink, it's your body and your choice.
Oh my God. Okay, I thought the version that came out last year I think it says this at the bottom of the article, who did the last year. They did a very funny update of it, and I thought it was cute.
It was. There was one.
My Body, Your Choice. Come on, that's just like that.
Also, it's the same result. The guy's just using her personal politics.
That's right. Actually, he's the worst. He's one of those
male
feminists.
John Legend, warning. We got your number.
Male feminist warning. Look out, ladies. Whenever they try and be as woke as you are, run the other way. I bet he is roofing her drink. But since you're here, Ella, as you always are, we're going to just have to have you put on your millennial hat. Because I think, Christina, we have found ourselves coming across these studies that kind of redeem the cliche of millennials being lazy
I'm tired
and
of the millennial bashing. And I get in real trouble for it on Twitter.
So I think we can start, we've had, for men, news you can use, like how to reattach your penis. I thought that
we're not going to talk about that again.
A great segment and very, very helpful, I thought. We should just have pro-millennial stats and research that goes against the image that they have. So this one, Ella, this I think came from the Washington Post and was headlined, "More Work, More Sleep. New Study Offers Glimpse of Daily Life as a Millennial."
More work and sleep, and that's supposed to be good?
Well, Ella, what does it say?
Well, apparently, on average, millennials get 9 hours of shut-eye each day.
That's a sign of depression.
No, that's good. As Ariana Huffington will tell you, sleep is the biggest issue facing us right now.
It's a form of suicide.
Millennials were more likely to be working, taking care of young children, or still be enrolled in school as well.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. They're ditching wedding registries and tiered cakes. And I think that's fine, because that all happened.
I take it back about being pro-millennial.
I want the tiered cakes.
But there was more comparisons in here.
Yeah, so they spend less time than non-millennials on household chores.
Yeah, I've noticed that, kids.
Civic or religious work and leisure activities. But something that was funny was millennials are nearly twice as likely than non-millennials to play games, including Scrabble, crossword puzzles, and computer games on a typical day, and to spend longer doing so.
Oh, God. When I'm with my kids at Christmas and Thanksgiving and holidays, they play a lot of games, categories. And
you taught me to that. That is a great game.
It is a great game.
But as we discovered, these lovely old-fashioned games are lethally competitive. It's like croquet or something.
Oh, you don't want to play with Tamla or any game. It's violent, actually.
But it's also, I've noticed this, that there are kind of these hipstery cafes. I don't even think they have alcohol. Maybe they do, but my younger daughter, my underage daughter, and my underage nephew would they'd go off and go to these, I think, cafes where they have board games on all the tables. And it's kind of, I think we may, for all our complaints about, teenagers and people being online all the time, I think they are seeking refuge in these games from being online. I notice my kids and other people are starting to the book has had a revival. They're reading books.
Can they play Scrabble? I like to play Scrabble.
Well, there's the big online Scrabble.
But I'm talking about in a cafe.
Yeah, I've seen Scrabble boards.
I would not play Scrabble with you because I have, and you're vicious. And you have strategies.
Don't play it with David.
Yeah, but I think I played it once with you and David, and I thought we were just having this happy little game.
Yeah,
and then
we're pretty competitive.
You were aggressive.
Christina's like, "Oh, here's a good word, cat."
I know, I had cat. And then
we come up with these words,
and then you would make moves not that didn't help you, but that would hurt me, and you had a strategy.
Well, yeah. It's called strategy, Christina. And then David comes up with words with like no vowels, and you go, "That's not a word." And then he like preens and opens the dictionary, and it's like, "Yes, it is." Zertzik. Anyway, well but so they're not cleaning their houses. I have noticed that. They spend half as much time each day relaxing and thinking than older generations.
They're not.
They spend half as much time thinking. How do you even measure that? Than older, and their participation rates in sports exercise, and recreational activities were close, with millennials eking out an extra 4 minutes a day on these pursuits than non-millennials. Well, that's also, they're younger too.
Don't they?
Although I think I exercise more than most millennials, I'm just going to say.
Don't they have time, though, just to, like, get stoned and hang out?
That's this baby boomer generation.
Oh, that's my generation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't do that so much. They have edibles and cannabis and, right, Ella? That's what you guys do.
That's what I can report back.
Well, before we're going to take one more break, because I mentioned we have 2 sponsors, and then we're going to come back, and it's going to be all about our listeners. We did a poll among our social media followers about ageism, and is it a real thing for women, and is it a category of discrimination? And
I think
then
it's a category of preferment. Doesn't hurt.
Only you. Christina, aside from taking our guests line dancing, I see her come out of the hotel in Nashville with a man following her with an umbrella. Whenever I travel with you, you have men throwing themselves at you. I'm going to say there's a lot of ageism going out there when it happens. Affects me, but we'll come back with that survey and some of your great listener reaction. We'll open up the mailbag.
Mailbag.
So, Christina, we've been talking about these millennials who don't clean, but given that they're so aware and woke, we have a great series of products that they make inspire them to clean more. It's called Grove Collaborative. They are healthy, plant-based, non-toxic cleaning products that work. How do we, millennials are so skeptical. How do they know how to trust them? And that's where Grove Collaborative comes in. It's the only online marketplace that delivers all natural home, beauty, and personal care products directly to you. They take the guesswork out of going green. So you don't even have to think. You just know that everything you're going to get at Grove Collective is going to be in line with your cleaning principles.
Cleaning principles and non-toxic, because it's frightening what they put in a lot of these things. And if you mix them, if you use Clorox bleach with some other product, it can kill you. These are healthy, and they deliver all your essentials to your front door, so everything's in one place, and they have the best selection of natural home and personal care products, things for the house, for the kids, for the dog, and even some fun personal things, all for me.
And I have to say, I'm with you on the Clorox, even though I'm not a millennial. I do love these green products, and they usually smell really nice too. So for a limited time, our listeners can go to grove.co/femsplain. That stands for Grove Collective, grove.co/femsplain, and you will get a free 5-piece fall gift set from Mrs. Meyer's. I love Mrs. Meyer's and Grove. Free shipping and a free 60-day VIP trial.
For a limited time only, you can choose from best-selling fall scents like apple cider, acorn spice, mum, pumpkin spice, exclusively sold at Grove.
And that should be mum as in flowers. It's not mum as in your mum, because that could be a bit weird as a cleaning product.
That could be weird.
But anyway, this is not weird. So go to grove.co/femsplain to get this exclusive offer. That's grove.co/femsplain and get your house clean and smelling nice. Just before we get into listeners, I want to express thanks firstly to those listeners who have supported us on Patreon. That's been a lifesaver. And every episode we get a few more, which we really, really appreciate.
And it saved this podcast. I mean,
saving the podcast.
And we love our supporters. We met a few in Nashville.
Yes, we did. And we're going to talk, because we're going to do our October, our Patreon, our special episode that we record for our patrons, where they'll be having it this week. And we'll talk about some of them came to Nashville, and we got to talk with them.
We could have, if we had a few more supporters, we could have meetups in different cities, because it was so nice to talk to them, and they like meeting each other. And
yeah, so we need your help. And I keep saying this every week. Honestly, if everybody listening just pledged $1, we could be recording this in in the Côte d'Azur. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. No, we would be fine, and we wouldn't have to have these ad breaks at all. In fact, I think if we get to a point where we have enough patrons, regardless if people want to advertise with us, we will go ad free. So please consider donating on Patreon. That's patreon.com/femsplainers. And next week, I think we'll be in a position to tell you about a new spot called ThinkSpot that we're joining. It's a new alternative to Patreon for those of you who want to donate but don't like Patreon for various reasons.
We're leveling up. And I will also, of course, let our Patreon contributors know about this. But this is going to have some interesting new features, and once it's up and we more fully understand it, we can launch it. But aside from that, okay, so ageism, is it real? Christina says no, or it only gets better for women. I say it exists because I don't have any Me Too moments anymore, ever. I know. The thing is, you attract a different demographic.
I don't know. You attract pretty young demographic.
No, not typically. But when I was younger, and especially when I'd be with my friend Debbie, or I remember once I was in Turkey in 1968, and I was with this girlfriend from Holland, this beautiful girl, and a whole bar emptied out and followed us at the whole bar. And everywhere we went.
That can just be so annoying.
It was so annoying. Well, it was her. She was like, people worshipped her as a goddess. And then I had a lot of trouble in Paris, just people bugging me all the time. And then I went back, and I was kind of shocked because I had no trouble. Nobody was following me and saying, "Hey, mademoiselle,"
lady.
And then, except finally, there was like, a 65-year-old guy who said, "Hey, mademoiselle." But the young man, no, doesn't happen.
Oh, you get. I asked, I was talking to David about this because I guess you shouldn't complain to your husband about not getting enough random male attention. I said, it happens to Christina all the time. And he goes, Christina is such a flirt. I thought, no, you're not a flirt.
I'm not.
You just exude sort of feminine joie de vivre, and it's like catnip. And
no, you know what I am? I'm a Californian, a native-born Californian, and we're friendly. That's why I think like this angry male-averse feminism, it came from the East Coast.
Us
angry women on the East Coast. They took it to California. Now we've got it there.
Puritans.
Mm-hmm. Puritans and just people that are pissed off, And it was just hard growing up in L.A. not to be.
Well, I can tell you a laugh I didn't get on my feminist panel at Politicon.
Oh.
I was talking about being treated seriously as a woman in the workforce. And I recalled a story that happened to me in my 20s, and I said, well, this doesn't happen to me now, but back in my Me Too days. And they're just like, you could just hear the crickets and like, that's not funny. Oh, we don't joke about that.
Yeah, they don't joke about it. Wait till their Me Too days are over and see
then they'll miss
it.
But anyway, okay, so we put this out to our social media. And Ella, what were some of the comments that came in? I always love reading these comments.
So this one is from someone named Allison.
Is this all on Twitter? We got some.
This is all on Twitter,
okay.
Yeah. She says, first sharp stab of ageism was at a recent conference. 10 years older than anyone at my table and 20 to 30 years older than the rest. I don't think they realized how dismissive of me they were. I remind myself that there are a bunch of people running for president in their 70s. # not dead yet.
Yeah, you know what? The presidential candidates make you feel young.
And Elizabeth Warren is dead sexy.
She is not sexy.
All right, what did someone else say? Yeah, I think also that we have to distinguish what is like female specific versus that old fart at the table,
Yeah, who wants to explain everything.
So this is from Melina. She says that her mother is 69 and experiences this whenever she walks into a clothing shop. She often tells her daughter that she feels transparent to younger salespeople And the daughter says she's had similar experiences as well. She's in her mid-30s. She, for example, was recently shopping at Lululemon and just found everyone really sizeless and dismissive. And when she wanted a younger or smaller size,
and they were sizes when she wanted a smaller size?
When she wanted a smaller size, apparently they were...
Oh, I want that kind of sizeism.
Yeah, that...
I'm sorry. Like, just because I'm a size 0 doesn't mean...
They're dismissive.
That's interesting. Well, shops are their own...
Weird.
Anthropological...
I mean, they're nice and...
They're usually pretty nice. They're usually pretty nice. I mean, I don't find it so much about age as it is about... do they have a perception of you having money to burn? And if you walk into a store and you're well dressed and maybe have some nice shoes or bag, they seem to pay plenty of attention.
Yeah, but I don't like the attention. I think one reason I don't like some of the, you go into Neiman Marcus or something, and there are these people that come at you, and may I help you? And the first moment
it's commission sales.
It's commission sales, and I like a store where they just leave you alone.
You would like a store that is so elite they don't even look up from their steaming of their
normally I'm just
expensive garments.
But like in Paris, the shops are terrifying.
Yeah,
because they follow you around and they want to. I mean, it's their tradition, but it's disturbing because they will not leave you alone, and they're just on you at every minute, and they're imperious and insulting.
Oh, that's the French. Yeah, they are French.
It's like that in Asia, too, where people will carry the bag for you wherever you go. And if you look at something, they'll immediately put it in your bag.
Or you try something on, and then they'll tell you how great it looks. And they have
everything looks great.
That's great. I can't stand it.
That's why we go shopping together. Yeah.
And they'll be like,
we're brutally honest
together,
with each other.
And then the person will be saying, "Oh, that looks wonderful," and Danielle will say, "Take it off. You look like a prison guard."
Anything with gray and black stripes, I rule out. Okay, so as people, I don't know that we can call these ageist in a female sense. Is there any very specifically?
No, but there is some interesting feedback from someone named Johnny who says that ageism is how everybody on the planet is treated except for women between the ages of 20 and 35.
That is
has a good
true.
point. But I would say between 17 and 32.
Right. Right.
And then...
Well, I think we're just going to, you guys, I'm sorry if we repeat ourselves. You just have to put up with it. But Germaine Greer, I think, was the person who pioneered this ageism because she had been a very sexy number in her youth. And in fact, a lot of her feminist popularity was not like Gloria Steinem, that when you have let's just say it, a hot babe preaching to you about feminism, it goes over better than poor Betty Friedan found out, would discover. She was very pro-male, and she was sort of we met her, very flirtatious in her earlier days, but would get overlooked, in the greeting line for Gloria Steinem. But she then wrote this whole, I guess, essay or chapter in a book about ageism of older women and the famous line of how you become invisible, to which somebody said, a woman who had not been as gorgeous and sexy her whole life said, welcome to my world. I've had ageism my entire life, right. So it is like a kind of, it's like a female equivalent of a first world problem.
Yes.
It's like, I'm just so beautiful. Or my breasts are just so large. I get so sick of the attention. My breasts are always attracting.
Simone de Beauvoir wrote, besides The Second Sex, she wrote a book about ageism, coming of age. And it's actually quite good. And she looks at just a lot of famous people and what it was like to have been, this bright young thing, and then you're fading. And
was she a hot babe?
She was never really a hot babe, but she was compelling when she was young. And she was always compelling.
And she was a famous mistress
of Sartre.
Yeah, Sartre. Yeah.
And of a lot of other people.
And sort of put up with a lot of abuse. But anyway,
she didn't just put up with it.
Yeah.
She facilitated it and took part in it. And
there you go, blaming the victim.
I'm not blaming. Oh no, she was no victim. She was no victim. The two of them actually lived out that liaison dangereuse, that story, preying on younger women. She would procure them. She
was the Ghislaine. Ghislaine.
There's
precedent.
They. I don't believe in canceling, but if you were going to cancel people for sexual exploitation, you would have to cancel both Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre.
We should do that at Thanksgiving or over the holidays. Let's do our own canceling game of through history. Just pull them out of a hat and do we cancel or not? But anyway, go on. Sorry.
But anyway, her book on age, what I found most interesting wasn't so much that you become less of an object of the male gaze, but you're getting older and you realize when you're younger, everything seems possible. Mm-hmm. Someday I'll learn to sail, and someday then you think, probably I'm not going to learn to sail. It's just not going to happen, or and then less time. And she said, in the book, she said, you don't really know, you don't feel that you're getting old, but other people around you perceive it, and let you know.
Yeah,
you start getting reactions from people. Like sometimes I'll go to a shop, like shopping at the supermarket, and then they'll say, do you want me to pack the bags very light, so they're not, you can, like I can't carry the bags.
Yeah.
And so then you think, oh, I must really look old. He thinks,
well, that is the thing that we haven't quite reached it, but that's the sort of thing that terrifies me about age, is because people who are now look very old. You just look old.
Yeah.
You're not going to get away from it. No hiding, nothing will stop you from looking old. You are apparently the same. Well, you're a much maybe wiser and better person, if less physically able, in your head.
Yeah.
But you're trapped in this aged body.
In this decaying organism.
Oh, no. It's not depressing fast.
No, it's not. It's interesting. It's life. I've been reading all of these. I just read a biography about Susan Sontag. And then Katie Royfey has a book about these various famous people, Dylan Thomas and Sigmund Freud and others, and what their deaths were like, their last month on Earth. It's actually
taking it down. Jeez.
No, these were people like Susan Sontag. She was fascinated with everything, including death, and she just did it in a fascinating. There are different ways to do it. Anyway, this is depressing, but this is about getting old. It happens to all of us, and it's.
We hope if we're lucky,
and that's if you're lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else on the ageism, or should we probably just move on to listener reaction?
There's lots of good listener reaction.
Okay, so let's bring it on, Ella.
All right. So this is some reaction from a man named David.
No relation.
This is in response to our recent episode with Amanda Carpenter.
She's the conservative, I don't want to say talking head, but on CNN contributor, and she's written a book called Gaslighting America. And she was famously gaslit by Trump and his team about having an affair with Ted Cruz.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. And we talked about conservative women and, basically conservative women, the Republican Party, how male the Republican Party has become, and how is it, but that they can remain sort of in the party of Trump and not be offended by a lot what's going on. That was the gist of it.
Yeah. So David says, I think all of you were floating a theory of Trump's popularity among conservatives, that he is a bully who is willing to fight the bullies of the left. First of all, I agree with you. I heard a similar explanation given by Scott Adams, that part of Trump's appeal to conservatives is that he is our bully against the left, the media, China, North Korea, etc. He went further to say, generalizing from something Chelsea Handler had said to Bill Maher, that this same persona can explain why some people are especially triggered by Trump. For example, Adams said if you are a woman who had had an earlier experience of sexual assault, might Trump remind you of that man who wouldn't take no for an answer? I'm not saying that only people with trauma in their history would have problems with Trump, but I'm saying that this extra factor could explain why some people are deeply distressed to the point of affecting their well-being beyond any mere political agreement or disagreement.
So it's our own trauma and past that can lead us to resent or reject the bully.
Oh, I don't know. I think there are so many reasons to reject him and be concerned about him. But there are people, for political reasons, fear the left more. And Scott Adams is one of them. He thinks the left is so full of bullies that you need a cantankerous bully to contend with them. Well, but I just wish we didn't have the bullies.
Right.
We could transcend this. Scott Adams was in Joel Stein's book. He went and met him and talked to him.
He's the Dilbert?
Yeah.
Oh, he's the Dilbert guy. Oh, my God, yes. That was an interesting section in
Very interesting.
Stein's book.
His house.
Yeah, he seemed like a sort of he seemed like a creepy...
No, don't...
You liked him?
No, I like him. I don't understand his support of the president, but I like him.
He seemed like a certain guy. I wouldn't leave my drink alone and around him.
We go way back.
Oh, okay. We're going to talk about that in another episode.
Not really,
Yeah, but he's our bully. I think that explains so much. I don't think it explains a lot of the female attraction to Trump. I at this stage of the game, I'm always surprised by people who will still support a lot of the things he says. And I don't mean his policies or whatever, but his really vile insults
orneriness
of people, and just say, well, and sort of take pleasure in him, quote unquote, owning someone else for these kind of schoolyard taunts. Like I would rather the person who was representing my views standing up to people I disliked was a little more Cyrano de Bergerac, a little more
finesse.
All right, next one.
So this is from Laura. She's also commenting on the episode with Amanda Carpenter. She said it's a great discussion of conservative feminism. And she says, what a shame that there are so few thought leaders in this space and so few forums for these ideas. On that note, she has a wonky question that probably no one is interested in, but she has to ask. She says, what happened to the Independent Women's Forum? I know that they still exist, but I'm asking what happened to them. I used to value the forum as a place where conservative or even moderate feminist ideals would thrive. In the GOP primary leading up to the 2016 election, they published a piece in favor of Carly Fiorina, a candidate with a lot of appeal for working women like Laura. And for many, many reasons, Laura was confused when the Independent Women's Forum lined up in support of Trump and anointed Kellyanne Conway as some sort of feminist icon.
Well, I think that they...
Was that the end?
There's a little bit more. But,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. She said, let's not even talk about Trump's juvenile comment about Carly's face. So speaking of the comments you mentioned, she says she's derisive of fascist feminists that are intolerant to the views of others, but can't help but want to take away their ovary card. I'm asking the femsplainers because she thought that you might have insight. Why are they in the tank for Trump?
I don't think they are in the tank for Trump. They have, and she's right. If anybody, they liked Carly Fiorina or probably Nikki Haley, and they are diverse. I mean, there may be some Trump supporters there, but they are diverse. And they did celebrate Kellyanne Conway because I think wasn't she the first woman that led a successful presidential campaign? So she was celebrated for that. And they gave her an award, but that was a few years ago. I just think that organization is... What I wish is that either that organization or there were organizations that were more scholarly and had more scholars and more lawyers doing serious analysis. They're more of a policy center, and they tend to support Republican policies.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, if you go back, if you haven't listened to our very first Femsplainer episode of How We Met and What We Drank, and we talked about, Christina and I met through the then fairly new Independent Women's Forum, and I was running and editing their journal and recruiting all kinds of writers and scholars to talk about women's issues in these new and thoughtful and researched back ways. And and you were part of it. I think with. We were all very simpatico.
And Sally Sattel was there.
I think, a lot of these organizations, and not just the Independent Women's Forum, have become, I think, in this time, there's a lot of
polarization and
partisan. There's a lot of partisan donor-driven policies of many, many organizations, and I think that's sad. This is why we try, for whatever political things pop out here, we try to be non-partisan, because I think the phrase "the personal is political" is one of the most damaging phrases of our time. That's taken hold. The personal should not be political.
It should be free and
and
fun.
Look, and it's I think we've seen over these past couple years that there are a lot of people who jumped on the Trump train, as it were, and continue to remain there against whatever stated principles they used to have, whether it's about rules of impeachment, calling up foreign countries, whatever. So that's part of the time we live in, and I guess many of these organizations are reflecting that time as well.
In defense of the IWF, I think they are, they have not taken a clear position. And I'm sure the people in there.
A lot of people sort of skating in the middle going, oh my God, what do I do?
Well, that's happened. I mean, a lot of people in Washington are doing that.
Yeah, this is welcome to Washington. I hope that answers your question.
Well, so here's some listener reaction from a woman that might defy our political stereotypes. This is from Mary Beth. She said, I'm responding to your request asking why, as a woman, I support Trump. I am a 50-year-old attorney living near Cleveland, Ohio, and am married to a woman. We both support Trump. I may not agree with everything he says or does, but we will be voting for him again. It is difficult to state why we support him as women because we don't understand why women have such issues with him in the first place. It's like asking us to prove a negative. The idea of being a woman who supports Trump doesn't enter my mind very often because why wouldn't it? And why wouldn't I support him? I am pro-life, however, and enjoy shooting sports, but am for certain gun control measures, such as no private sales, and she wants all sales to go through the appropriate background checks. She says, my pro-life stance was even stronger when I was an atheist, and it is not based on religious reasons. We also do not align with the far religious right in regard to Israel. We support both the land and the Jewish people. On the other hand, the far left seems to be concerned with the people and not the land. I bring this up because it's very hard to pigeonhole people when such extreme positions are taken by the far ends of both sides, and any conservative or liberal will not always be aligned with everyone in their party.
That's great.
And I, what's her name again?
Mary Beth.
Mary Beth, I like you because here's my statement. I'm going to make a statement. I appreciate people who defy expectations and stereotypes, and I worry right now that there's this enforced conformity, and so people have to sort of fit. There's a certain type. So if you're a lesbian and you're an atheist, then you have to be pro-choice and for gun. There are all these sort of ideological entailments, and I just think it's better when people can be
free to be you and me
and unpredictable. People are so and that's what I liked. Like when David was debating Ann Coulter, and Ann Coulter has said some impossibly outrageous
she's a real
things.
Sort of showman.
And
can I say showman?
She's sort of a performance
provocateur.
Artist. But I appreciate her. I mean, she's funny. She's smart. She's courageous. She's self-made, and
she said she's going to come on the show. I buttonholed her, so we're going to have her on the show. That's going to be fun.
Well, we have to have Ann Coulter, and then I think we should try to get Laura Duca, the radical feminist.
Oh, that would be, but she blocked you.
Well, I know.
Right.
Roxanne Gay blocked me, and she debated me, so maybe, and I think Laura will be more polite than Roxanne.
Well, I sat next to her on a panel, so maybe I'll do the reach.
Okay.
Anyway, I think we'll get to more listener reaction in our next show. So we'll wrap this up now. Thank you again. Thank you. A big shout out to our supporters on Patreon, and see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Femsplainers. Keep up with us on Twitter and Facebook at Femsplainers and on Instagram at Femsplainers Podcast. Send questions and comments to contact@femsplainers.com.
A big thanks to Ella Ryder, our research and in-studio production assistant, and to Nat Frum, our audio and video editor. And we're proud to be part of the Ricochet Network and grateful to the American Enterprise Institute for allowing us to record in its studio every week in downtown Washington, D.C.
And miss something? You'll find everything you need at our homepage, femsplainers.com, including links to past episodes, our sponsors, where you can sign up to support us, and even to merch. And please don't forget to like us or give us 5 stars on iTunes.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.